Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, we're going to be continuing the NFL rankings, and today I'm going to be giving you guys my top 24 running backs for the 2024-2025 NFL season. If you didn't see my quarterbacks list, you should probably go watch that first before you come to this video, but quick disclaimer as usual, if you disagree with anything I say, please let me know down in the comments. I want to hear all your guys' takes about anything I say, start some conversations about stuff. I love it all. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Cue the intro. I'm sure you guys need no introduction to how this works. I mean, if you guys saw my quarterbacks list. So without further ado, let's get straight into it and start off with number 20. We have Raheem Mostert. I mean, you guys already know. I mean, he's slow. I mean, he's getting really old now, but we can't act like he didn't have arguably, well, not arguably, undisputedly the best season of his entire freaking career. But you know, he's going to be sharing the touches a lot with Devon Achane. He's not going to be as significant because again, he's very injury prone. So we just don't know what to expect from Raheem this year other than the fact that he's going to get his touches taken away by Devon Achane. All right, next up at number 19, give me David Montgomery from the Detroit Lions. Again, if you saw my way too early ones, then you'll see that I put David Montgomery in the top 10. But that was before I realized how good Jahmyr Gibbs actually was. And, you know, much like Raheem Mostert, he's going to get a lot of his touches taken away. I mean, I get it. David Montgomery had 1,000 yards and 13 touchdowns last year, but Jahmyr Gibbs, in just less than 200 carries, did almost have 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. And Jahmyr Gibbs is the receiving guy too. So, you know, David Montgomery is going to be, you know, underutilized a lot more than he was last year because they still have Jahmyr Gibbs. Now moving on to number 18, give me Devon Achane from the, you know, Miami Dolphins. Again, much like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, you know, you have one guy who is very talented runners such as like Raheem Mostert and David Montgomery, and then you have another guy who's taking all their touches and can basically do everything else. So yeah, that's basically the same exact thing with Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. Also, Devon Achane had 8 touchdowns in only 11 games played, and he scored 60 fantasy points in one game. Now moving on to number 17, give me Kenneth Walker from the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think he's a bad running back at all. It's just that he's been very underutilized these past couple years because, you know, they haven't really needed him as much. They've had DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. But he still did come in the Offensive Rookie of the Year voting a couple years ago. He still almost broke 1,000 yards last year, and there's no reason for me to think that Kenneth Walker is not going to be a dangerous threat this year. All right, next up at number 16, give me Isaiah Pacheco from the Kansas City Chiefs. You guys already know, with as good of a passing team as the Chiefs, how are you going to get playing time? This guy, however, has been very consistent. He's only gotten better. 2022, you know, he was a rookie. 2023, he got better. It's just my only concern is the injuries. He's behind a good offensive line. He's got a good, best quarterback in the league throwing him the ball. I just don't. There's no reason why Isaiah Pacheco will not have some success this year. Next up at number 15, give me Najee Harris from the Pittsburgh Steelers. You guys are insane to put this guy outside of the top 20. Najee Harris, he had an insane year last year. I know he's sharing the touches with Jaylen Warren, but he still had over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns, and he can still catch the ball just as well as Jaylen Warren. My only concern is who's throwing him the ball. I mean, you got, you know, Russell Wilson, but they did make a lot of improvements to their offensive line. I think Najee Harris could really be dangerous this year if he is used right. All right, next up at number 14, give me James Conner from the Arizona Cardinals. He gets a lot more heat than he actually should. The Arizona Cardinals are going to make a huge improvement this year, and so will James Conner. I know if you guys saw my record predictions, the Cardinals are still going to have a pretty stinky record, but if you watch the games, you will see a massive improvement. Same with James Conner, who could really catch the ball better than most people expect him to. He broke 1,000 yards last year. He was actually like pretty high up there in the record books. And unlike all of these other guys, he doesn't have anyone to share the targets with other than, maybe Trey Benson. But, I doubt that Trey Benson's going to be as significant as, guys like Devon Achane or Jahmyr Gibbs or any of those guys. Next up at number 13, give me Joe Mixon from the Houston Texans. Again, another guy that gets a lot more crap than he actually should. It's just that, like, in that receiving room, how are you going to get playing time? He is going to be a beast, though. I'm calling it now because, every good passing team needs a good running game. And again, like James Conner, he doesn't have anyone very significant that's going to maybe steal his touches. But again, Joe Mixon was top 5 in fantasy scoring last year, and for a good reason. He came up big in yards for the Bengals last year, and now if he can carry that to Houston, then he could be one of the most dangerous threats out of the running game that we have seen this year. Right now, moving on to number 12, give me Josh Jacobs from the Green Bay Packers. Another guy that gets a lot more crap than he actually should. But, I mean, this year he just wasn't really healthy enough to have significant stats. But when he was healthy, he was the rushing yards leader, and he was, obviously had 12 touchdowns. He was a beast with the Raiders. It's just that he has to stay healthy in order for me to put him inside the top 10. I hope my opinion can change on him, but the more I see him get injured, the more I want to stick to this current opinion. All right, now moving on to number 11, we have Travis Etienne from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, like a guy that I feel like is very overrated, not fantasy purposes. I mean, I would draft this guy for fantasy purposes. But in real life, if you watch the actual games, he's not as good as a lot of people make him out to be. I mean, there are a few times when you get him at the goal line and he just completely goofs and can't even get 1 yard. But the same number. This is the same number of touchdowns. He's at 11, and he had 11 touchdowns last year. Barely broke 1,000 yards, but we can't act like this guy's still not a dangerous threat. Right now at number 10, give me Aaron Bones Jones, now of the Minnesota Vikings. Again, a guy that is missing a lot of time. He hasn't had a fully healthy season in a little while now, but put this guy in the playoffs, he's gonna be the Aaron Bones Jones that we all know and love. Again, just we have to see him stay healthy. But if he can stay healthy, he's one of the best running backs, arguably a top 10 running back in the entire league. Moving on to number 8, give me Kyren Williams from the Los Angeles Rams. Again, he's going to have a lot of his touches taken away by, Blake Corum. I don't want to say the name, but we still can't act like in just only 12 games, he didn't even play a full season, and in 12 games, he had 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. He averaged a rushing touchdown per game. Like, that's insane. The reason I already told you he's going to get a lot of his touches taken away by Blake Corum because, he's going to be punt returning. I don't know why they're doing it, but they are, and that's why, Kyren Williams is having his his spot in the rankings messed up. Now moving on to number 8, give me Jahmyr Gibbs from the Detroit Lions. This guy has the brightest future out of any of these running backs, arguably. I mean, literally, in just less than 200 carries, he almost broke 1,000 yards and had 10 rushing touchdowns. How could you not put this guy inside the top 10? I mean, again, see, David Montgomery's going to take some of his touches away, but when you have that good of stats and just this slightly less amount of, playing time, then Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute beast. Now moving on to number 7, we have one of my favorite guys right now for fantasy purposes. We have Breece Hall. He's on one of my teams, and obviously for all you fantasy users out there, you must have drafted him like early first round. I mean, this guy has better receiving stats than Christian McCaffrey. He has more yards. He has more receptions. Almost could have more fantasy points after this year, and they added a lot of meat to their offensive line by getting Tyron Smith and drafting Olu Fashanu, and Last year, he had good receiving stats while Zach Wilson was his quarterback. Just imagine how good he's going to do with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. Like, I just still think that Breece Hall is an absolute beast. Now, moving on to number 6, just barely missing out of the top 5, but we have Bijan Robinson from the Atlanta Falcons. Again, a guy that was very underutilized last year with Arthur Smith. I just hated the way that he was used last year. He was used like in the most horrible way possible. I watched all the games. But again, like Breece Hall, for all you fantasy users out there, you must have drafted this guy. I mean, he was my number 1 overall pick because, like Breece Hall, he finally has somebody good throwing him the ball. And, he was already a beast last year. So, with Kirk Cousins finally throwing him the ball, Bijan Robinson could go down as one of the most dominant running backs that we've seen this year. All right, now coming in at number 5, we have Nicholas Jamal Chubb from, the Cleveland Browns. I'm so sorry to all you guys. I love this guy to death, but, he's not going to be very significant this year. He's never going to be the same like he was in his 2022 and, ever since his rookie year. This guy is one of the most dominant running backs, and if it wasn't for that injury, he would be automatically number 1 because Nicholas Jamal Chubb is that good. However, he's not going to play that much this year. He's going to miss 5 games because his injury was so bad, and, he had his leg really just run over by a train. And, he's never going to be the same again, but he's still a top 5 guy, undoubtedly. All right, next up at number 4, give me Jonathan Taylor. Another guy, if it wasn't for injuries, this guy would be either 2 or 1. But, and even with this less amount of games that he played, he still put up 700 yards. So just imagine what he could actually do. And let me just say this. In 2021, he had arguably one of the best seasons I've ever seen by a Colts running back, or just a running back in general. Like, this guy is just an absolute monster, and there's no reason for me to think that he won't be a monster this year, considering that he's behind one of the best O-lines in the entire league, and the Colts are a big rushing team. All right, now moving on to number 3. I'm sorry, I can't be biased. I can't put this guy number 1, but give me Saquon Barkley from the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, listen, he's behind one of the best O-lines. He's been very injured these past couple years and still almost putting up 1,000 yards last season while being injured and while being behind a garbage O-line. So just imagine what he could do when he's behind one of the best O-lines. He could put up like 1,300 yards and 15 rushing touchdowns. I just think that Saquon Barkley is an absolute monster. And now moving on to number 2, give me Derrick Henry from the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, this guy's going to score like over 20 rushing touchdowns this year, not even close. If Gus Edwards, if the Ravens can have Gus Edwards score 13 rushing touchdowns, and just imagine what they could do with Derrick Henry. He's going to be like, he could be in the candidate for Offensive Player of the Year. Not even kidding you for a sec. All right, now moving on to number 1. I hate the 49ers. I really do, but you already know it's Christian McCaffrey. Probably one of the greatest running backs that we have ever seen. I mean, this guy can do it all. He had 21 total touchdowns, obviously won the Offensive Player of the Year last year. My only concern with him is how much time that Trent Williams is going to miss, but it doesn't matter. Christian McCaffrey is still an absolute freaking beast. He can do it all. However, if it wasn't for Nicholas Jamal Chubb's injury being, so bad, then he would be number 1. But, for now, Christian McCaffrey takes it. Guys, that is going to do it for the rankings for running backs. Please make sure to leave a like on this video. 1 like equals 1 prayer for Nicholas Jamal Chubb. I'm just kidding. But either way, please leave a like on this video, and please make sure to subscribe. We're on the road to 600 subscribers. Thank you for all the support you guys been showing. I'm trying to get monetized very soon. So I'll see y'all guys the next time I upload. Peace.